This is Kim from North Versailles Public Library, and this is our book club part 5 for the Johnstown Girls by Kathleen George. Today is going to be chapters 9 and 10. In chapter 9, Ellen attempts to visit the flood site by herself just after her husband passed away. She wants to use the dam as a lesson in her classroom. The school will not pay for a school bus for a field trip to the dam. She keeps thinking that she should have made the boy rescue her sister before her. Bill and Ellen had already made the 14-mile path years before, but this would be Ellen's first time by herself. She couldn't make the trip, but went back the following day and was able to make it. The town was a melting pot before the flood and continued to be a melting pot after everything was rebuilt. It was different, but also familiar. When Ellen gets home, Rosemary, who hadn't been on the best terms with her since she found out about the adoption, was waiting for her. Rosemary has breast cancer. Rosemary was more worried about money and wanted to make sure her son David could go to college. Ellen was more worried about the cancer. Ellen says she will pay for all of the medical bills and go to New York with Rosemary for her treatment. 2 years later, Rosemary died. Ellen kept losing friends and family, but she kept on living. Chapter 10. Anna has a visitor from the nursing home, the daughter of one of her son's old friends. Her son was killed in World War II. Anna reads her newspaper every day, but she can't read Ben's story about the flood, and she isn't sure why. Anna's nurses want to hear what nursing was like when Anna was a nurse. They want her to tell them sometime. Anna remembers how she met Will, her husband. She has a hard time remembering to say African American and not Negro, which was what he was called then. Will ran the elevator at the hospital. One day he had something in his eye, and she took him to a room to remove it. Her supervisor reprimanded her and told her never to nurse a Negro again. She told her supervisor to report her, but not him, because she did not want him to lose his job. She kept waiting for a reprimand, but nothing ever happened. One day she had to leave for work early and walk because of a trolley strike. She saw Will working on a yard. He worked the elevator, gardening, and minor carpentry. He asks about her son and family. He tells her that his wife left him 7 years ago and he has his own house. He tells her other people are staring and makes sure she's okay being with him. Anna says she doesn't mind. He walked her to the hospital and asked her if he could meet her after her shift and hire a car to take her home later. She said as long as she doesn't have to stay over. After her shift, Will was waiting for her at the hospital doors. Anna is reading the newspaper and finds a picture of actor Joe Clark and thinks it looks exactly like Will. She asks the aide to cut it out of the article for her. She tells the aide to take the newspaper with the flood story in it because she can't read it. She looks at the article and the movie Joe Clark is in and thinks about Will. Will and Anna left the hospital and walked to the hill where his house was. They got more stairs along the way until they made it into the hill. The house was poorer but cleaner than Anna's mother-in-law's house, and she likes it better. Will made them fried chicken, collard greens, and baked potatoes. Anna's mother-in-law wasn't happy when Anna said that she wanted to marry again, and was even angrier when she found out who it was, and tried to keep Anna's son with her. But Anna's son helped Anna fight against that, and Anna, Will, and Anna's son stayed together. Anna thinks she must be dying soon, since memories of those past before her are so close. Ben tells Nina that he has to go to a retreat with Amanda as part of their therapy. Nina tells him to go. She'd rather him be sure. He is angry because he thinks she is pushing him away. Nina drives into work with Ben the next day and decides that she is going to ask Hal if she can write a side piece about the flood, the story of her grandmother and mother's floods. He tells her to write it and they will decide later. Nina also reaches out to a professor at Pitt who has done some research on memory and in children, and they will meet tomorrow. Doug also calls her and they decide to go to dinner on Friday as friends. It's Ben's turn for dinner, so they will order pizza and Nina will make a salad. Ben tells Nina he is going to have dinner with his kids on Friday before the retreat. She tells him not to go to Atria's because she will be there with Doug. She also suggests that he live with Amanda and the boys for a month to see how things go. He can start renting after that if he truly decides he doesn't want to be with Amanda. Nina meets with Rebecca Silverstein, the professor from Pitt. Nina tries to explain what she's looking for without giving away Ellen's name. So all she says is that a traumatic event happened when they were 4, one of them survived, and one of them went missing. Rebecca explains that language has a lot to do with memory. If the child could talk, they would remember more. If people around her told her what happened, that would be her memory. If people around her repeated what she said, then her memory would be more solid. But if people around her told her something else happened, she would believe that instead. Rebecca sends Nina home with some articles. Nina and Doug are supposed to go to the movies after, but end up spending the whole evening talking instead. They talk about the fire, Doug's dissertation on women in the workplace. Nina asks him what types of professions a destitute woman would take up, trying to figure out what would have happened to Mary. Doug is genuinely curious about Nina's life. They watch the baseball game together and then go home. Ben and his boys eat at Eaton Park. Then he drops them off with his sister-in-law. Amanda and Ben go to their group therapy session in Ben's old car. And next time we will do chapters 11 and 12.